Good morning and welcome to Cheche, the show where opinion counts, live on Citizen TV. I'm your host, Udwa Kamimo. Now, we know that we have a youth bulge. Close to 80% of our population is under the age of 35. And one of the campaign promises the government made was to address the high unemployment in that group. So we've had the Uwezo Fund rolled out and more recently a shiny new National Youth Service. Those accomplishments belong to the docket of the Cabinet Secretary for Devolution and Planning, Ms. Anne Waiguru. She's our guest today. We also have in the Cheche studios Mutegin Jao of Royal Media Services and political analyst David Makali. Good morning and welcome back to Cheche. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you.
So this glossy, shiny new National Youth Service that's been unwrapped on our screens, what's the thinking behind those changes?
Udrak, as you know, we have, under the Jubilee government, a commitment to empower the youth. And this was one of the 7 pledges that the President and the Deputy made during the campaign. And so we reorganized and restructured the National Youth Service to address what it is that we had identified as challenges with regard to our youth. So we came up with a new 5-point plan, which completely reorients our understanding of what the traditional National Youth Service is, and it was restructured to deal with the needs of the youth as we see them today. So it's not just about rebranding, but it's about a whole reorganization of the institution and the culture of that institution so that we are able to address the needs that we have seen that challenges that have actually been identified with the youth.
So we'll come to the branding in a moment, but what has the National Youth Service moved away from? What's it moved into? What challenges are you addressing with it?
Okay, one of the things that the NYS is known for previously was an institution like a torture institution where you take people to just train them in paramilitary, especially those of us who went through it when we were going to university. It was sort of a dreaded institution. It was a good institution with regard to discipline, but more the focus was mostly on the issue of paramilitary only, and not so much significantly impacting on the individual. So what we have done is that we have completely reoriented that institution to focus a lot more on other aspects. We are talking about issues of socialization, we're talking about civic competence, we are talking about reorienting our youth to understand their responsibilities as individuals, not just what they expect the government to do for them, but what the youth can do for this country. So we've completely looked at all the aspects that relate to the youth. We've come up with a 5-point plan that deals with the training aspects, the issues of...
Tell us that 5-point plan.
Yeah.
What is it in a nutshell?
One is on the issue of resocialization. We have a conversation around social transformation, talking about patriotism, issues of civic culture, fortitude and strength, and that we deal with the paramilitary training. Then we have the aspect of training and competency development, and this we have expanded. So we've moved from the traditional training that we've provided and expanded our schools to offer a lot more broader training. So we're not just looking at the traditional training that they were doing, which was very basic, but looking at the skills that we will require for the current industry. We've expanded the engineering school, for example, to have oil and gas. We've expanded also to deal with professionalization of transport sector. I'm sure you've seen we're talking about the issues of traffic marshals, but we're also going to be training, for example, the drivers for matatus and all. We've also are looking at aspects of the exit strategy that ensures that the youth are given the skills to be able to stand up. Because what usually happens is that we take them through the training, but when they exit, they are not able to find jobs and they're not able to stand on their own 2 feet. So we are completely reorienting them in training to ensure that they are able to save. It's part of the training, and we actually require them to save and then set them up in circles and enterprises that they can now start new businesses for those who are able to start new businesses. And if you're not able, then your counterpart then provides the employment for you. So we are looking at the whole aspect of not just the issues of employability, character issues, civic competence, but also other aspects that everybody has been talking about, the discipline issues as individuals, and our obligation to this country.
So how long does the term of NYS recruit take? And when do you come in, when do you get out?
It depends. It takes about 2 to 4 years, depending on what training you choose. So the first 4 months, you do the paramilitary training. After that, you go to what we call the national service. And national service is what you're seeing us doing in Kibera.
Yeah.
So when they go for national service, they serve themselves, but also work with other people in the community, training them and impacting the same skills that they have learned during the paramilitary training and their socialization, about civic competence, about serving your country, etc. And then during that time also, we train them on aspects of savings and all. Then you come back after 4 to 6 months to class, the 20,000, and then you take on your specific course. So if you're doing catering...
By 20,000, you're referring to the entire class of graduates that you're looking for? Okay.
The servicemen. So we have the servicemen, and then we have the youth in the communities. So the servicemen are the ones we recruit. Those are the ones I'm assuming you're asking.
Yeah.
So they go back, and now it depends. If you're doing engineering, it will take 3 years. If you're doing hospitality, it will probably take 1.5 years. So the length depends on what training you take thereafter. Yeah.
And then after the 4 years, then you are released from the service. You can go to society and carry on with your life.
Yes.
What about that ripple thing? You're saying cells that are going to be set up and so forth. How does that tail into what you just said?
So these servicemen and women are put into regiments. So they work in groups of 15, even when they're doing the service, the national service. And they also mentor young people in the communities where they are serving to form similar groups. Now, they serve within those groups. That's how we structure their circles. What happens is that for every, let me talk about first the community youth. For every 10 shillings they get, 30%, we retain 30% and put it in a circle for them. So they save during the period of service. Now, for the ones in the service, there is a stipend that they get, and we also save for them a certain portion. So after 3-4 years, you have a substantial amount of money within your group, which then you can go and invest. And you've gone through the training. If, for example, you are in the hospitality sector, the training is oriented towards businesses that you can do in that sector. So if you're in the construction and you're training in masonry or whatever, the group that you are in will come out with about 200,000, 300,000, and you can start a construction business. And you're given the support by NYS thereafter. So that's what we're doing.
So what's the interaction between youth in the village and the trainees? How do they meet?
Servicemen, yes.
Like right now, let me give you the example of Kibera.
Yeah.
We have about 1,700 youth that we've employed. We intend to employ about 3,000. But the servicemen that are currently in Kibera are about 500. So for every individual serviceman, they work with 5 youth.
Presumably you have women as well. You're just talking about servicemen generically.
Yes.
Right.
As in servicemen and women.
Yes.
So we have the servicemen and women, and they mentor groups of between 5 and 8, depending on what it is that you're doing. And during those 4 months, that's when you work with them, you mentor them, and they go through training. So during the day, in the morning, they clean Kibera. After the lunch break, they go to class.
Where? Who?
They're in Kibera. So we have the social halls where we take them through the normal training that the other servicemen have gone through on civic culture, responsibility, how to manage your resources, your money, so that it's not just about giving you the pay, and then after we leave Kibera, you're not able to even sustain the cleanliness. So the ones in Kibera, they have programs that focus mostly on waste management, so that when we leave, they're able actually to set up their businesses. Some of them are already running the businesses in waste management, so we've given them better skills on how to run that business to make it profitable, to cover the whole of Kibera. How do they make their money? And so the money that we pay them now, a lot of that money, 30% of that money will go into setting up these businesses. And so that's what we're doing with regard to the training in the afternoon.
Well, just a minute, I'm a bit confused.
Okay.
At what point do you become an NYS service person?
Okay. There is a separate recruitment to be a serviceman. You will see that probably in another week or so. And that's advertised to be an NYS serviceman. And there is a special recruitment for that. And it actually has certain criteria that you need to meet, and including there's an age limit, right? Which is about 20 up to 24, I think, if I'm not wrong, between 22 and 24. Now, for the youth that work in Kibera, you can be up to 35. Right? The ones that are now employed to help clean up. So the recruitment for the youth to be servicemen and women is completely separate from the recruitment of the youth who are working on programs and projects. Yeah. So what will happen is that we will recruit 10,000 like next month, and then another 10,000 in another 5 months. So we'll recruit a total of 20,000 servicemen for NYS. And then those 20,000 will work after 4 months of going through paramilitary training with another 200,000 youth across the country in various projects. Okay. And so the model, how they will work with those youth, is the same way you're seeing it happening in Kibera. So you have, for every serviceman, about 5 or so other youth that are in the community who get engaged in various initiatives that the government is doing in national service. And during that period, since they have learned about civic culture, giving back to their country and all, we give them the opportunity to practice that which they have learned before they go back to class. Because when you're in NYS, the government pays for your training. So this is like a giving back to your country, sort of, and teaching about the civic culture that we want inculcated in our youth.
How did you arrive at the figure of 20,000, given that there are millions of youth in Kenya who are underutilized?
And will this be an annual recruitment of 20,000?
Yeah.
Yes, it will be an annual recruitment right now of 20,000. We hope to increase the numbers. But last year, the recruitment was just 2,000. That's what NYS has been taking, just so to give you the picture of where it is that we're coming from. The year before we came in. So last year, we increased the number to 4,000. This year, we're increasing to 20,000. How did we come up with the number? It's a capacity issue. You need to have enough facilities to take this number of people and for you to be able to train them. So the number is actually determined more than anything else than with the capacity that we have in terms of the institution of NYS, and also with regard to the training and trainers that we have as well. So you cannot, it's just like universities, you have a limited number you can take in a university. Yeah. We take numbers depending on how many people can be accommodated in that university. So right now, the NYS, the maximum that we can take at this point in time, and we've really stretched it, is 20,000. And on top of that, we therefore designed a program that will go beyond the 20,000. Because if we retained the program as it was before, then the only number of youth that you're impacting are the 20,000. Because those are the only ones you'd work with. So we came up with this program. How do we reach the others who are out there who are not part of this 20,000, considering that we have several millions of youth out there who are looking for opportunities to be empowered and also to serve their country, and also to ensure that at some point they're able to be given the ability to become independent individuals. So we developed the program that enables us to do that.
I'm intrigued about this relationship between the one service person and the 5 other yes. Dealing with. Who ensures there is an amicable relationship, there is no animosity, there is no conflict?
And it's sustainable and productive.
Yeah, and yes. Who ensures that it is going to happen?
Okay. In the training, you know, the NYS is a disciplined force, right?
But so the youth from village are not disciplined.
No, and that's why you have the reorientation in the afternoon and the trainings in the afternoon. It's not so much about ensuring that there is no animosity, because it's actually a work relationship. It's a skill transfer relationship. It's not a relationship of friendship. It's we are now building. Like if you go to Kibera, you will find that there is one who is a trained mason working with 5 training young men on what it is to be a mason, the basic skills to be a mason. So
Ms. Waiguru, I'll jump in, just because I think the point Mutegi is making is, say for instance in a workplace, you have HR and you go and complain about your supervisor, or your supervisor complains about you. Now within the context that you're describing, how do you ensure that you have a professional working relationship, that there's no sort of abuse taking place?
Okay. The NYS is already regimented, right? So you have platoon leaders, you have company leaders. They have their structure. They have a whole human resource department that deals with the recruitment side. And the human resource side is buttressed by other departments in government. We have, for example, the Ministry of Labor is involved, if you're talking about the contractual relationship, if I understand you correctly, the contractual obligations. So they actually recruited within the law, according to the law, as casual laborers. Now, in terms of managing that relationship, it's a normal working relationship like you would have in any institution. And so you have your HR in NYS, but you also have your platoon supervisors who supervise several of the servicemen and women. And above that platoon, there is a company leader who also supervises several platoon leads. So it's a service. And so you have the structure there, and they're trained in what that structure is. But more than anything else, I think what we need to focus on here is that this is a work opportunity, right? It's just that we've inculcated within the work culture a training aspect to ensure that it is sustainable. When we walk out of Kibera, what will these young people be doing? You know, you need to ask yourself that question. How are they going to continue with their lives? Because we will not build toilets forever. There's going to be, after 6 months, toilets will be finished. And there will be sewers. And so there will be nothing else really, in essence, to do in that place. So what is it that these young people are going to do? What is it that you would want them to do? And so what we are doing is training them to become self-sufficient. And so with even the skills that they acquire, they work on other assignments elsewhere that don't necessarily have to link with NYS, because the period they are working with NYS is 4 to 6 months. I don't know whether...
I mean, out of all these questions, you know, let me just go general, because this looks like a very intricate reworking of the state of society, of communities. Somebody comes in here, you have somebody mentoring, you know, the last person, serviceman, who is dealing with 5 people in, say, Kibera. Of course, there are challenges with anybody engaging some people in community. Today you see them, you hook up 5 guys, after 2 days, one has disappeared, another one after 1 month doesn't show up. You know, what is the level of engagement that ensures sustainable relationship and that this goes up to the desired objective? 2, you mentioned something that you know, is not clear in my mind about work opportunity, and that these people, this guy is hiring these 5 people. There's transfer of skills, but there's also employment work going on here, meaning they're being paid.
Yes.
I mean, how is this working out? Are you creating other jobs within the state infrastructure, in fact through the NYS, or was it the objective to enable youth to create jobs for themselves? Because then this is at the tail end of it.
I think we have to break up your question.
Yeah, I mean,
it's very long.
See the measure
okay,
in my head.
Let's start with the first one, sustainability.
Let's say sustainability.
Yes.
I mean, there is employment going on here. Guys are being engaged. What are the terms? Let's get specific here. And what does it imply on the whole government budget? And we're talking about shrinking. Now this looks like more jobs.
That's a different question, you know, you're asking.
Well, I think I'm confused in this whole mess.
Okay, fine. Please deconfuse David.
My many
Thank you.
The mesh
take
of
back
too
that
many
word.
things.
It's not a mess. It's very clear to us, by the way, and it's working very well. I think I'm going to Kibera, by the way, in the afternoon. You can join. Maybe you would understand it a little bit better. But the issue of sustainability, how do you ensure that these people come? We actually don't. It is not like any workplace where you go and you employ casuals. You don't require them necessarily to be there every day. People need jobs. People show up. In fact, we cannot meet the demand to keep them. We can't take everyone, you know. I'm sure you know that one of the questions that we've been asked mostly, what are we doing about youth and youth employment? There are no jobs out there. And so there are quite a number of idle young men and women who will come consistently because there is a need in this country to provide employment. So you don't even need to start saying, how will you ensure?
But then
you
what will happen though is the mentorship part, the transfer of skills, because if today 2 guys come, others may come or not, and we're talking about empowering them, okay? So there has to be something that teaches the trainer with the 5 people they're working with, and consistently so we see the end result of it. First of all, how much do they get paid for that casual employment?
I think the payment is within the normal government requirement required for casual laborers. So it's I think it's between 450 to 550. I'm not sure the exact figure, but it's within the casual per day fees. Now, how do you ensure sustainability? First, I have said there's already a need. So on our part, because there's not that much work out there, it's already, from what we have seen, even just in Kibera, and Kibera is not what anyone would say is their choice of casual labor work. One, the need. Two, is that they're contributing to their own community. Those people who are there are cleaning their own environment where they live themselves. So there's a certain level of commitment. The third thing is that we're working with the community itself. We have the community leaders who know these people by name. They already had a social engagement before we even went in, asking them, we are thinking to come to Kibera to do this. Are we welcome? Would you want to work with us? This is what it is that we're thinking to do. So in terms of engagement and community engagement, that has already happened, and therefore the issue of sustainability has been a lot easier. However, having said that, like in every institution, you can never retain your staff 100%. So you work to, as much as possible, to structure your programs so that they're very attractive and ensure that they actually stay for longer. For example, working half days. It's not every day that you get people breaking off at lunchtime to go to class. People are hungry to be trained on how to manage resources. You will be amazed at the turnout, even in the afternoons, coming to discuss how is it that I can save, how is it that I can invest, how do I run a business that is profitable, how do I engage my community and people around me. So just the nature and the structure of the business, of the training, which has been developed in consultation with various people, including social scientists, helps to ensure that we have a good retaining percentage of about, we're hoping for about 80% to 100%. We don't know yet how many will stay. In the end, we'll be able to tell at the end of the year.
Whose work is that? Who determines the work and whose money is? Who is paying? And whose work is being done?
Who determines the work?
Yes.
The NYS program already identifies the areas that we'll be involved in across the country. Kibera is just one of other, very many other activities that we will be doing. If you've seen the advert, it talks about traffic, it talks about road construction, dam construction as well. So there are many other activities that are going to be going on across the country. Slum upgrading is just one of the things that we'll be doing. So we started with that, and that's already in the NYS 5-point plan. And so what we do is then we move to implement that program. So the kind of work that NYS will be involved in is already determined.
So who is paying these guys?
It's us. The government is paying.
Paying for that work to be done? Is
it sustainable?
That's a big question. How much can you roll out sustainably within this budget?
Okay, you know what? Let's park that one for after the break, because I think we need to dwell on that. And we've got to pause now. Stay with us. You're watching Cheche. We're live on Citizen TV, and we're discussing the government's attempts to keep our huge population of youth gainfully employed and productively engaged, with the Cabinet Secretary for Devolution and Planning, Anne Waiguru. Tell us what you think. Our SMS number is 22422, or you can tweet us. The handle is @Cheche_TV.